Welcome back, everybody, to the Vet S.O.S podcast on the Scoop sub channel. Now, today we have an awesome guest, Matt Lewis. He is going to give us the scoop on his book, the Mission Transition. This is something that, as a veteran, soon to be veteran, for the ones that's transitioned, man, once you get this book, it's a wealth of knowledge. And we're going to touch on a couple of things because what Matt put in this book, every transition service member, even if you're transitioning into a different part of your life, you should have this because it relates. This book was published in 2019 and it's 2025 and it's still relevant in today's information. Let me just tell you a little bit something about Matt. So Matt is a military veteran. He is also an authorized, successful author with over 49 accolades for his book. If you don't believe me, check it out. But I'm not going to do the introduction because everybody, y'all know me, but we need to know Matt Lewis. What's his why? What is the scoop for his book? And why is he here to share it with us on the Best S.O.S podcast? So welcome, Matt. And I'll pass the show over to you. So explain, what's the scoop on Matt?
Well, thank you, Kings, for having me. First of all, like we say, veterans sharing our stories, and that's what I hope to do. And really, it's my personal story isn't of import. It's I think what is of import is where my passion lies, and how hopefully what I've been focused on for the better part of the past decade can help those individuals find careers, full employment, and careers that are optimal for them and where their passions lie. But since you asked, just a thumbnail sketch on my background, as the lack of hair would betray, I'm not a young person. I'd say that offers me some perspective, though. I came up through the ranks after graduating from West Point in 1991, spent 5 years on active duty, another 16 in the reserves. So all told, as I could say, 25 years in a uniform of some sort. I used as my transition vehicle graduate school. The GI Bill and all that didn't exist at the time. I paid my own way through grad school. Used that, frankly, as my 2-year effort to deprogram and upskill and come to terms with my underlying competencies and skills and where and how those fit into the real world. That worked for me, but there's all sorts of paths that work for different people. That led to roles in the corporate world, 27 plus years and counting in the corporate space now. Stops along the way at places like Procter & Gamble, General Electric, a couple different divisions each. About 18 years at Deloitte, largest professional services firm in the world, where I did a lot of consulting and various capacities. Focus in recent years in the SaaS platform space. We'll get into a bit the organization I'm associated with, Purepost, helping veterans and really anyone for that matter translate their work history, education, training into something that can match them in real time with opportunities in the workplace today. I've gone back into professional services just to keep the cash flow coming. But to sum it up, a strong passion for trying to work to eliminate what I call the civil military divide in the country that helps both the individuals on the military side find full employment out in the career fields, help organizations that would benefit from hiring veterans and military spouses if they saw fit to educate themselves on the value of it and how best to do so. And so looking forward to today's discussion, and thanks again.
I appreciate it. So let's just jump into it. So the scoop on the mission transition, as I was reading through, I was like, in my little over 20 years in the military, I was not really prepared for that transition. I wasn't prepared to understand who I was, as a human being first, and then coming out of the military into the private sector, what I'm going to do. And I've been running across veterans in the same boat. So when I went through and I seen, wow, understand who you are. So one of the things that you wrote in your book was like, what are you going to be in 5 years from today? Like your transition point, I call it year zero, right? In 5 years in that veteran transition, where are you going to be today? And in 2019, like I said, in 2019, you How long did it take you to put this book together? By the way, I'm just curious. How I know extensive research, extensive note taking, and going around and putting a collective information in one resource for people to just literally, like I said, it's still relevant till today.
Yeah. Well, we could do a whole show on that. To answer your question, though, it probably took a solid 3 years. Although I'm told by those that deal in this space on a lot more regular basis that that's relative light speed. The average people will tell you is 5 years to get a book from idea or when you start writing to actually having it in print. It took me about a year to write. Took me at least another 6 months or so to find an agent and lock in a publisher, and then took the publisher about 18 months to get the darn thing published. So that's the short answer. It's not easy. As I was sharing with you before we got on, the dirty little secret for those of you that might be pondering is that authors make no money. If that's your goal, everyone else along the value chain takes a piece. But for those of you that are interested, I'd be happy to talk you through it. I got many stories I can share.
And I appreciate it. So can you touch on, like, when you wrote understand who you are, like how would you, if I'm a transition service member, if I'm somebody transition, when you put that in your book, like understand who you are, even to this day, 2018, I did my transition, and it took me about 3 years to understand who was Kings again.
Yeah,
Like, how was Kings going to contribute to society?
that's right. And so I'll approach that from a couple of different angles.
Okay.
One, I believe it's Stephen Covey advocates that we should begin with the end in mind. And so when focusing out and building back in from there, that's not, I do a lot of corporate strategy. We, do the exact same thing with organizations and helping them identify their end state and put in place strategy and tactics to build towards that. It's the same thing on a personal level. It's just with different background. The complicating thing, and you just intimated as to why it is so difficult, is because those of us in the military, with very few exceptions, by the time we get ready to transition, we basically know no other life we've had. We spent the entirety of our adult human life in the military, wearing the colors, saluting the flag, and with that comes a military persona that you've been operating in, for some kids 17, 18 years old, and you frankly know no other way of being. So suddenly, and I'll try not to go down too far down the rabbit hole of the TAP program, but suffice it to say that the transition process that the military writ large affords its service members today is insufficient. I have zero expectations that will improve. That's not to poo-poo the services, although let me just go on this one tangent. It would behoove them, but I know it won't, because here's the question. If I'm the CEO of the Pentagon, pardon the metaphor, and I've got limited capital to allocate, which I do, is it going to go to beans, bullets, and mission, or is it going to go to helping people successfully matriculate for my organization? It answers itself. So long story short, the service member is always going to be shortchanged, but I'll say that that's short-term thinking, because service members that are insufficiently prepared tend to meet with transition failure. Repeated stops. Typically, folks job hop 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs, so much so that half of service members still aren't in their preferred career field by their 6th post-military job. It's an incredibly sustained rate of failure. Does nothing for you, for your family, for your prospective employer. All of those restarts, it's incredibly sustained rate of failure, like I said. And so, where was I going with that? So the idea, the point is, you've got to go back to ground zero and really start with who you are as a human being, understand the nature of your particular skills, which will have its roots in passions, and then tie that. What is the linkage from those to where and how that might fit in the real world? And again, we can talk more about my work at Purepost, but that's exactly what we're trying to help individuals do, is discern what their passions are in life, how that applies to the specific skills, competencies that they developed over their time in service, and then link that to optimal career fields that they're going to have a passion for. So much so that they're not going to work every day; they go to play every day, and as a paycheck is a side benefit as part of that. So, long-winded answer. I'll pause there.
No, that's good, because that plays into the untapped resource. Like you're a I tell all the veterans this, just think of it as a unfounded oil well, right? You don't know what's underground, but you have to dig through, you have to go through the soil, you have to go through hard granite, you have to keep digging down. But then when you get to that, oh, there's liquid gold, how are you gonna package that up and deliver it to a company? What that is your fuel. How are you gonna get that crude oil into the gas tank of these vehicles to take you there? So that untapped resource, and what you just rolled into, is what I believe in the community is we have been exposed to a lot of situations that we could utilize on the other side of the fence, right? And like you mentioned, you went through West Point, and then you came and served, and then you went on to the corporate sector. So if you could just touch on that, and thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, we could definitely go through the screen share, and if you could touch on that, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned resources. And before I dive into the slideware, I just wanted to touch on what I would term a critical resource for the folks that are out there. Again, the whole purpose of the first book is to help individuals. And it's another inside baseball story. When I first published, when I was looking for publishers, HarperCollins published it. And lo and behold, they had word count, which limited the number of pages. But there was about a 25% of the original manuscript that never made it into print. And I told them, I said, well, it's not as if the content is worthless. And if y'all don't see fit to publish it, I'm going to put it on my website for free. And so why I bring this up is on my website, MatthewJLewis.com, what you're going to find out there are a ton, all free resources that augment the book. There are a ton of, I've taken pains to put together video courses. You're going to find 21 free video courses out there that bring forth the content of the book and those resources all wrapped in one. So another way to digest the content, all for free. Some other people prefer going through a workbook of sorts. So there's about a 450 slide workbook out here, again, all for free for y'all to download and use as you wish. Let me pivot, if I can, to answer your question here. And just to lay out again some of the basis of the book. Let me move this slide and see if I can't blow this up and give you all a better view. Okay, there we go. So just to emphasize what we just talked about, this, by the way, there's a process map that is the basis for the book and how it's written. And so let me dive into a few of the things. First, overarching the book. Here's the question I'm trying to answer throughout the entirety of the book is, how can all of you realize your full potential by avoiding those false starts, all that job hopping I talked about, and suboptimal career choices following active duty? And my goal for all of this is to help you all find full employment optimal career fields. And so let's talk about setting your course to kind of get at, how to identify who you are, and then we can get into how you portray that. So this is what I term to be the self-discovery sequence. I talked about identifying your strengths, your underlying competencies. That's the first step. The second, there's standard personality tests out there that will help you understand where and how your strengths translate into real world application. And then that pivots into what specific career paths might be viable for you. Without slogging you through all the detail, this is a summary of the strengths exercises I take you through in the book, where we ask you just identify what are some verbs that resonate with you, and then we turn those into specific statements, strength statements, that will help you identify, just from a basic strengths and passion standpoint, where you could potentially play in the world. We build upon that with, again, personality tests. I list a few in the book. I encourage you to take 2 just to kind of confirm the outcomes from one. And so it gives you a little more confidence if you've got results from 2 of these and they tend to correspond with one another. But then understand who you want to be, which is the third part of that sequence, and the self-discovery sequence, and what your potential career paths are. These percentages here are statistically based in where the typical transitioning veteran ends up. So kind of think of it as a decision tree moving from left to right. Of veterans that transition, most of them end up in non-governmental service, about 15% in government. Some go on to schooling of some sort. And then you can see how it cascades from there over to the right in various components. Again, the self-discovery sequence in the upper right, that's going to help you identify where on this decision tree you ultimately end up. Let me pause there before I continue with the slide where, so we'll get into the next piece of that, make sure I'm dialed in.
Sure. And like you say, it took you years to put this together. As going through the transition phase yourself, I'm sure that you've seen some of this pain points when you was doing your transition. And when I was going through the book, so just in case if y'all want to know, it's all inside the book as well. So make sure y'all grab a copy of the Mission Transition, because what Matt is going over is exactly what's in the book. This is the scoop version of it, right? So this is the scoop. He's letting y'all know the Reader's Digest version. Like, this is the information that will help you succeed, and it will help others succeed. So go ahead, Matt. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll just keep plowing here. Building on that, next we look at, you're gonna, in the book, the next step is looking at a number of different lifestyle filters, I'll call them. And you can look at the criteria here. So is the benefits package of your prospective employer important? Your career field should be a priority. Where you want to live is probably a consideration, etc. And the idea is you rank those in terms of importance from 1 to 5, and then you rate each of those rank criteria against your career field options. And that gives you, I say, kind of a non-emotional approach to deciding which of these career field options is going to be best for you. Just one way to get at it. I mentioned career preferences and personal brand. You talked about, how do you entice a prospective employer to understand who you are, who you want to be, and the value that you can actually add. And that's what this chapter is all about. It helps you talk through, again, further peeling back the various roles that exist in an organization, which is comprised of either core business processes or support business processes. We look at potential industry preferences. And it could, within commercial industry, it could be any of these. And within each of those, it could be a large, medium, or small size company. It could be public work. It could be private work. It could be related to the industry, or it could be from a consulting basis. There's all sorts of dimensions to these that need to be considered. And then a number of filters and exercises around helping you determine what are your geographic preferences? Where do you and your family want to live? And other lifestyle factors. Is job security important to you? Do you want to have flexible or virtual work arrangements, as an example? To what extent does your compensation and benefits package, what does that need to include? Because compensation is, trust me, far more than simply your salary, which you may have been lulled into understanding while you're in the military. Some roles are going to require you to travel. How much? And how does that comport with you and your family's priorities? What opportunities are available for you in the organization to kind of continue to sharpen your saw? And then again, circling back on that with that understanding, adjust or update that prioritization matrix, take the emotion out of it. Personal brand, getting into your question about how you entice them, understand who you are. Again, it starts with the aspects or attributes of personal brand. It starts with who you are. So you got to go through all of that in order to articulate what are your strengths, values, and skills, and how you leverage them. But really, the key part of a personal brand is how you present yourself and how you communicate. There are studies that have been done by people far more intelligent than I, and have broken out how your communication impacts others. And interestingly enough, more than half of your impact in communication is driven by visual aspects. So how you show up visually, how you dress, how you appear to that individual, drives more than half of the impact of whatever communication you're going to have. So beyond simply what you say and how you say it, it's how you dress, it's how you behave, it's your body language. So, and we talked through a little bit of that.
That is powerful, Matt. If you could just go back to that last slide, that is so powerful, and I want everybody to take a snapshot of this, put it on your phone, and just remember when you're transiting. Because I just want to share part of my journey, and I'm still going through it right now. Is you're spot on. Because now when I'm thinking about, it, I was like, wow, 55% visual aspect, right? So I'm on a long extended health journey right now. Imagine Kings plus 105 pounds. So right now I'm down 105 pounds, but it just like you said, that visual aspect, because if you're going for a interview, even though if you're of size, you have to, make sure that you're within reason. You dress nice, you dress appropriately, because that is going to be one of the key factors that they're going to look at, unfortunately, right, in society. So when I tell people like, wow, you was really that, yes, I was really that, because I was in such of a depressed state that I kept eating and stopped working out, and then I kept growing, right? But now that I see myself coming back down to size, now I'm getting more hey, there's a job opportunity, or hey, can you come speak at this event, or hey, can you do that? I was the same person, but what they seen was they had those glasses on and just seeing me from the outside and not getting to know me from the inside. And that, like you talked about, the vocal elements, right? I tried to tone down. I call it Brooklynese, right? I tried to tone down my East Coast accent so people could understand me. Because, like, man, that's a heavy accent. Where's it from? And then when I tell them, they're like, I knew it was from there, but I didn't want to say. But it gives that, it starts opening up that communication. And when you come into the 7% verbal elements, is the hand and arm gestures. Are you excited when you're going for interview? Do you seem that you're interested? Are you just nonchalant and stuff? Then they're gonna move on to somebody else. So those communication impacts are huge. So thank you for putting that in the book, and thank you for sharing that from your perspective. So wow, this is so powerful.
Yep. Then the other aspect of this, in terms of how you portray yourself, all comes through the all important document that we call a resume. And key to that is effectively translating what you've done into language that your prospective civilian, hiring managers are going to understand, and then tailoring that to specific opportunities and soliciting feedback from folks before you put it in front of anybody else. So how do we do that? Here I start the book with what I call a 5-minute MBA. Assuming you're going for a job in a for-profit organization, net income or profit is what makes their world go round. So you got to understand how your skill sets, your competencies drive one of the line items on this simplistic income statement, and be able to connect those dots with the bullets on your resume and the stories that you're going to tell as part of the interview. So people tend to struggle with this a lot because they don't implicitly see how what they've done in the service impacted a bottom line. I mean, you weren't driving profit motive. You were serving God and country. You were fulfilling the mission, all of that. What you need to do is peel it back to what are the underlying skills, competencies you have that you executed on to drive that mission accomplishment. It's those same transferable skills, we call them, are the things that are going to apply to every line item on this thing. And that's the story, the tale you got to tell. And so the book walks you through all of that. The other key aspect of it is terminology. And one of the many, I started up front with my website. One of the free resources out there is a voluminous thesaurus that translates all these military terms and three-letter acronyms and things that you've grown accustomed to using over the years into language that folks can actually use. Two other tools I'll throw out. Obviously, we're now in the age of learning language models and ChatGPT and AI, et cetera, and there's tools out there. I mentioned my work with Purepost up above. Purepost offers a platform, we call it a passport, for free for life in the course of 15 minutes. It'll take all of your inputs from your work history, your education, training. It'll spit out well, if you're concerned about a resume, it'll spit out a graduate level Ivy League resume, but it'll do two more important things in concert with that. It'll instantly translate your underlying competencies and skills, and then instantly match you to any job opening in the country for which you're a fit based on that translation. No, there's not a better company in the market doing that on a quality basis today. So if you're not familiar with it, check out Purepost Passport, all yours for free for life. So let me hold up there. That's a lot to digest before we move to the next.
Wow, and you just mentioned Purepost, because I had no idea, but you did also hit on a key topic, is AI automation, and this is a lot of concern for transition service members now. Like, wow, I don't even have a leg up now. I'm battling against a machine, and what I've shared with others and on my other time is, don't be afraid of the machine. Just know how to utilize the machine. It's the same concept, right? Don't be afraid of the vehicle. If you don't know how to drive stick, a manual, guess what? Get some driving lessons, learn how to drive manual, because then once you learn how to drive manual, you could drive anything and everything else, right? So with the new AI transition, this is going to be a part of life. This is going to be the movement ahead. So now start getting into these small resources that will help you with that terminology, that will help you with that transition.
Yep, and there's, people should understand that there's machines operating on the other side as well, called applicant tracking systems. When you think about hiring managers' role, they're having to sift through hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. They don't take the time to sit and read through these things. They have, it's called an ATS, applicant tracking system. They will take your resume in whatever form you give it to them and use the ATS to screen you in or out, given terms you use or keywords that they're looking for. And I speak in the book to some tactics on how to overcome that, but people need to be aware of that as well.
100%. And does this kind of translate? We talk about Purepost, is when you mentioned in your book your true north. Like, how do you find that true north? And when you came up with that terminology and you put it in your book, can you elaborate on that? When you like, hey, you have to recognize your true north. Like, which direction are you wanting to go?
Sure. Well, anybody that's in the military knows, you got to set your compass to true north to figure out, where you're going and the road that'll get you there. And that's really the basis for the first couple chapters. There's a lot that's written in this space, but few of them begin as I do and where I think you need to. And taking the time, and by the way, you read in Appendix A in my book, I advocate for a solid 24-month time frame to help figure this out. Kings, you mentioned it took you 36 months, and that's not abnormal for all the reasons that we spoke about at the top. You got to carve out the time, and when you're down in the weeds and gutting it out and you're running your mission, it's hard to do that. But if you have the foresight to understand that you're probably going to leave the military, then you need to do yourself, your family, and your prospective future employer a favor and do the homework. Carve out the time, and it doesn't need to be huge blocks, but a little bit here and there to work through the series of exercises in the book to get you to a point where, again, you understand who you are, who you want to be. Those two things combined essentially set true north on your compass.
Oh, that is huge. So, as before we started, I told you I was in law enforcement, right? So in the Air Force, law enforcement, and did a little over 20 years. So I had to say, well, what can I use? I'm just a cop. I'm just security forces. Like,
Cool.
when I had my mentor sit me down, he's like, "You're not just. Imagine you're protecting $1 billion assets. You're you see what I'm saying? Like he went down the list and identified all the stuff. And he said, by the way, you was doing that in your early 20s. You was doing that in your 30s. Do you know it take people on the other side in the civilian sector to be in their 40s to get what you're getting in your 20s? So you could use that as knowledge. Like you're not just I tell people like, oh, people just say, oh, I'm just a cook. Like, no, you're a food service specialist. Do you know that measuring ingredients and to make sure the warfighter is capable to go out there and get the mission done? Your job is important. Utilize that information to transition over to what the company wants, what the company is looking for.
You're exactly right. I pulled up this slide to foot stomp that point because I was one of those trigger pullers. I was, as we said back in the Army, a dumbass tanker. And so I was told you're either going to be a cop, you're going to be a truck driver, thinking at that level. But, that wasn't where I had a passion for. Those weren't my underlying competencies and skills. I bring forth this slide to make a couple points. One is, those that do serve in a combat specialty, it's less than 15%. So there's a misnomer out there that everyone's a trigger puller, and I won't get into the whole PTSD thing, but that's another stereotype that quickly follows that. Look at the first column on this table and flip that percentage around. What it tells you is 85%, or I should say, service members serve in occupational specialties that 85% of which are directly accredited to their civilian equivalent. So other than the combat specialty, I can choose any one of these and it's going to have a plug and play application in the real world. Now, that's not to say that because you were in HR in the military, you have to be in HR once you get out. No, in fact, it's just over half that end up in a similar career field. And when you transition, you can hit that restart button and reskill, just as I had to by necessity, coming out from the combat specialty as an armor officer. And I guess the second point to make there for those that are focused in a combat specialty or want to pivot from one of the other occupational specialties, you have a huge set of transferable skills and competencies, but you need to take the time and understand it, just like your counselor was trying to advocate for you. There's lots that you can do, but you got to tease that out, qualify it, quantify it, and understand where and how that fits in the real world. And that's what Mission Transition is trying to help you all do.
Wow, that is so huge. Once again, law enforcement, and then now I'm in technology, right? Cybersecurity, data analytics, process automation, risk discovery, compliance. But I had to find, like you said, I had to find how did it align with what I've already done and translate it to what I'm doing now. So when I tell people, just look at what you did and just, as we talked about before, right? Peel back the onion, get to the core. What did you do? Let's translate it to what they're asking for. Because you already done it. You just don't know that you've done it. I tell people even with the phone, they're like, oh, I'm not technology. I was like, you have your phone? Guess what? You're in technology, right? Because you know how to do password reset. You know how to search things. It's the same concept. Oh, process automation. Whenever you say, hey, Siri or hey, Google, guess what you're doing? You're doing prompt engineering. You're already doing it. You just didn't know. And he's like, it's that aha moment, when that light bulb comes on, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so you talk about interviewing for roles, and then once you get to that role and you see that, you know what, this is going to be my next chapter.
Yep.
What's the scoop on how do they close that deal? Like if they come like, man, this is me, this is the job, this is what I want to do, I'm passionate. How do they close the deal? What's the scoop on closing the deal so they could get and start their new transition?
Yeah, and the important part to keep in mind of the entirety of the process, this is the one time in terms of negotiating leverage, it's the one time when you actually have some leverage over your prospective employer, because they've come forth with an offer and now it's in your hands and how you respond to that offer. And what they put forth as that offer likely is not going to be where you end up. So how do you do that? And chapter 9 of the book speaks to these topics. What I tell you to start with, here, understanding your financial needs, researching the salary ranges, understanding compensation. Again, compensation is far more than your salary. There's a bevy of benefits that you are able to take advantage of, and I suspect you've not taken advantage of many of them while you've been in the military, and they're civilian equivalents sometimes, and sometimes they're not. So understand what those puts and takes are, what their relative value is, and how you negotiate for those as part of your package. And I guess the other point to make specific to that is the last time you probably negotiated a contract might have been in high school when you probably had some fast food job or something. So I talk you through how to negotiate and practice that. So just talking through some of these in a bit more detail. There's, again, free resources online, downloadable templates, have at it. But and again, beginning with the end in mind, let's first exercises determine what are your required retirement savings. And there's a couple different versions of this for what I call JMOs, junior military officers, or NCOs, and then folks that have been on a lot longer, what I call career military professionals that might have a pension. So there's a couple different scenarios, but that will help you determine what do you need in terms of salary going in there based on where you're trying to end up from retirement. And there's a worksheet that talks you through how to do all of that. Another interesting thing, you probably never thought about how your compensation is treated with income tax. Where you live, for example, especially if you have a pension, may hugely impact your take-home pay. For that matter, you had a lot of benefits in the military that weren't taxed, BAS, BAH, combat pay, jump pay, et cetera, flight pay. Typically, those things aren't taxed, and so their equivalents are. And if you have a pension, some states tax retirement benefits. So you may be very surprised to find that your take-home pay outside, because of the tax implications, ends up being less. So, and again, exercises in the book to help you walk through what that looks like, help you put together an annual budget so you maintain and track your spending so you're not spending more than what you're bringing in. Any good book will tell you about that. Also, a series of exercises here around comparing military and civilian benefits. Again, free downloadable template. This is just a snapshot of a very lengthy spreadsheet that compares military benefits to their civilian equivalent, kind of quantifies that, relatively speaking, and lets you identify, after reviewing all that, what are the benefits that I need that aren't in the package? Is it a must-have or nice-to-have? Do I need to include it? And then how do I go about negotiating it into the package? Again, this is the one time in the process where you got some leverage. So do your homework, negotiate what you need into the package so that you and your family get what you need coming out of it. I mentioned some negotiation training. And again, the book spells out the detail on what these mean, but walk you through the exercise on how to put together a negotiation plan so that, again, at the end of the day, you get what you need, and hopefully, ideally, you end up with more than one offer, and you'll be able to choose amongst the various offers that you have. Again, same way as we did before, a simple cross-multiplication exercise to take the emotion out of it as you sit down and make these decisions with your family. So,
wow,
I'll leave
that's huge.
That. Yeah.
No, that's huge because just to let y'all know, this book was published in 2019. Mind you, it's 2025. And I just had a conversation with a veteran trying to transition. I said, always consider the total compensation package. And Matt hit the nail on the head because we don't realize, like you said, we get the BAH, you get the combat pay, you get the overseas pay, you get housing allowance. That's not taxable. But once you come over to the civilian side, here's your total compensation package, and now you went from one tax bracket to the next, and now you're gonna get more deducted, so you're coming home with less. So I tell people, look at the total compensation package, right, and maybe you could request for more PTO time, or maybe you could, it's Like you said, the ball is now. This is where you play tennis, right? Back and forth across the to where you can find it works for both parties. And one of the reasons why we're here on this scoop and we're about to close it down is one of the last chapters in the book. Assimilate and pay it forward, and that's what we're doing here on the scoop. We're paying it forward because I guarantee that somebody didn't hear about this book, because I didn't hear about it until a couple of months ago when I said, "Hey Matt, you want to come on the show? We're starting on Vet S.O.S. the Scoop." Shout out to the producer Sean Welch. He said, "Hey, I got somebody that wants to come on the show." I said, "Good." I said, "This is awesome because this information right here is worth its weight in whatever's richer than gold is worth its weight in that plus 1,000." Right, because this right here is powerful, and I just want to thank you, Matt, for coming in on the scoop on the scoop and sharing the resource with us, right? Because it's gonna be a young lieutenant, it's gonna be a young private, a young airman, a young Marine is gonna transition, right? Because not everybody goes to the 20 plus years. Right. If you look at the statistic, it's a small percent. I think they said under 15% goes to retirement. A majority comes in and do maybe one tour or two tours, and then they back out into the thing. So for them to even transition and have this book for life, right? Because it doesn't matter. It's fluid. It changes. It changes when society moves. This book moves with it. Like, this information will never get outdated because it is true and it's valid. So I just want to say thank you, Matt. And what's one thing that you want to share with the Vet S.O.S. the Scoop sub channel that is going to help the transition service member, that's going to help the transition human, right? Because it's more than just a veteran network. I call it the human network, right? Because it's just we're serving, and then now we're serving in a different capacity. Other people, they're serving in a capacity, and then they're going to be serving in different. But everybody is always going to make that transition.
Yep, you're exactly right. I'll circle back and end on that note. The one thing I would add, and it's within the last couple chapters of the book, and it's the one thing that will probably be most important in determining your tenure wherever you end up settling with an employer, and that has to do with the organization's culture. And the difficult thing is culture in its various dimensions is probably one of the more difficult things to put your finger on. You're going to have to do some homework, do some networking, do some shadowing, do some informational interviewing to really get on behind the door and under the cover to really understand how individuals tick within this organization and what their expectations are. What are the values that drive their behaviors on a daily basis? And will you be able to tolerate, live with, acclimate, and assimilate to that culture? I'll leave it at that. There's lots of detail in the book that will walk you through the details and how to go about trying to put a finger on the pulse. But make sure you do that before you land where you're going. And I guess I'd sum up with exactly your point. I see what I'm doing right now as just an ongoing service, and how I've conceived mentally when I made the pivot. Maybe it's just my own rationalization, but I saw whatever I was doing as service. I wasn't waking up every day, going to the gunnery range, going out in the field, going to NTC, whatever it was. But I'm waking up, I've got a skill set, and I'm going to work every day. I was in professional services. So what I was doing was helping address these clients' difficult business challenges that not only impact them, but their clients. And I worked in a capacity such that I could kind of see the output of what I was doing end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So that was kind of cool, but it wasn't so much about the plaudits and that. It was about the service that enabled those things to happen and knowledge that I had something to do with that. And so, service, not just in a work capacity, but bringing it back to the books and my collective efforts around eliminating civil military divide in the country. I'm very passionate about the topic, and I've done this all gratis. And again, you'll find tons of free stuff on the website. Take care of this. It's all about helping my fellow veteran. I'll add that this is personal to me. One, because it's impacted so many of my peers, and negative outcomes have impacted so many of my peers. That's not all I'll say about that. It's also personal from a familial standpoint. My oldest son is about to pin on his butter bars and go down range as well. So I want him and all of his peers to succeed for all of our benefits. And hopefully the transitions that they experience in years to come will be far easier and more productive than the ones that Kings, you and I went through.
And I appreciate that, Matt. And how can they get in touch with you? Can they reach you on LinkedIn, your website? I know if you could just put that information out one more time so they could jot it down and connect with you on LinkedIn, go to your website and definitely purchase or get a copy of this book right here, because I guarantee you this will definitely enhance your life.
Thanks, James. Yeah, you hit it. LinkedIn's a great option. My website's good too. There's direct contact links on my website if you want to set up a meeting for whatever reason as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Vet SOS podcast on the Scoop channel. You just received the scoop from Matt Lewis on the transition, on mission transition. Please go get your copy. Please reach out to Matt, because y'all just heard a little snippet. Imagine what else you could hear and listen to. And don't forget, he's coming back because he has another book. We're going to talk on that as well. So thank you, everybody. See you next time.